we're going to be pivoting right now, talking about something super exciting that a lot of law firms do not focus on, which is profiting first. It's so funny. It's like there's nobody on the internet talks about money. And sometimes as a lawyer, you have to be open about money and stop feeling guilty about profiting first. So if we could have Marco unmute, we couldn't think of anyone better to speak on this. Actually, funny enough, Marco and I were both at the 10X Growth Conference, this huge Grant Cardone conference a couple months ago. And, we're both trying to figure out this profit first mentality. So Marco's going to be talking about both how to profit first in a retainer-based firm and a contingency fee firm, and some super exciting stuff. So make sure you guys are taking notes, because Marco is a practitioner of these strategies in his firm. Marco, take it away.
All right. Thank you much. Thank you very much for having me here. Want to kind of introduce myself a little bit. I'm a divorce attorney in Salt Lake City, Utah. Help people maximize their time with their kids and their money in divorce. So that's what we do. And I just want to say I'm sorry to everybody out there going through this. This whole thing just sucks. My family and I were in Italy when they locked down the country. We got the last plane out of Italy coming back, had to lock down in our house. And I'm still like flipped out of my mind. My jaw clenches at night. The whole bit, I found myself eating more sugar now. Like I wake up later, the whole thing just sucks. So I feel you. And this is the best way I know how to get through this type of situation. So there have been a lot of talk about loans so far. And if you got to take a loan out to make it through, absolutely do it. What I'm going to talk about, profit first, is a way not to have to take loans out the next time something like this happens. So the idea of profit first, and profit first, I'm going to base this on the Profit First, the book by Mike Michalowicz. So if you don't have it, go get it. You can also Google Mike Michalowicz. It's a horrible last name to try to Google, but get close to it, and you're going to get there. Go buy the book. You can Google the one sheet, because I'm going to talk off the one sheet a little bit as well. But that's really going to be the basis for this. So the concept of profit first is kind of like Dave Ramsey for your law firm. So those who are familiar with Dave Ramsey, he's the get out of debt guy. So he gives you a step-by-step process called the baby steps for getting out of debt and then building wealth once you get out of debt. But getting out of debt is the first thing. So again, this is how you do this, so you don't have to take out loans the next time we have a big, whatever it is, right? Economic downturn for whatever reason, whether it's 2008 or the coronavirus. So that's really the concept here. So Profit First does the same thing that Dave Ramsey does in your home for your business. And on a kind of a personal level, I, in 2015, had tons and tons of student loan debt and, debt in the business. Decided to Dave Ramsey the whole thing and get everything done. And then I was looking for, and it was great when you get your personal debt paid off. It's so fantastic when you have no more house payment or anything else. And then I wanted to look for the same thing in my business, and that's where I found Profit First. And it's been a real godsend. So the advantages of Profit First. One, it's easy. It's a step-by-step process for looking at your money in your law firm and getting your money straight. Two, it's intuitive. We're lawyers, we're not accountants. So when accountants try to tell us about numbers, I literally have no idea what my accountant is talking about. And I think pretty much everybody's like that. It's like reading Hamlet. I really don't know what Hamlet's talking about either. I just don't want to admit it to other people. But it's the same kind of thing with accounting. Michalowicz has set up a system that is super easy to look at, and anybody can understand it, even lawyers who don't do math like me. So it's super intuitive. It's based on you looking at your accounts in your bank like you do every day anyway. Three, it's that step-by-step to help get you out of debt and to increase your profits and really look at it and say, okay, this is where the money needs to go, and have a plan. And then number four, it takes, after the first about month or two, first maybe 2-3 months, it's going to take you a little while to get the stuff figured out. After that, it's going to take you about 15 minutes. That's about how long it takes me at the beginning of every month to allocate all my money and think about my money. Literally, it takes 15 minutes, and then I can go on my way and do advertising, new client consults, and get cash to come in. So I want to give you a little bit of an overview of the steps of Profit First. I'm not going to go into all of them. Go get the one sheet and look at it. Go get the book and look at it. But I'm going to give you a kind of overview of it. So the first thing you do is you go to your bank and you set up 3 accounts. Okay, this is the income account, and that's the holding account where essentially all your money goes in. Then you have an owner's pay account because you got to pay yourself, and there are a lot of people not paying themselves right now, but you got to pay yourself. And then you have your operating expenses account. So those are the 3 basic accounts that you open in your bank: income, owner's pay, operating expenses. Then you go to, Michalowicz tells you to go to a separate bank. You don't have to do this. I don't do this because I have self-control, but you can go to a separate bank and open 2 different accounts. That's the profit account and the government's money account, or your taxes account. And the reason you do it at a different bank that's actually hard to get to is because you don't want to go raid your government money account or your taxes account or your profit account for kind of normal things. And if you have it at the same bank and you don't have a lot of self-control, you may just go raid those accounts and use it for operating expenses, and you shouldn't be doing that. Okay, so you go to a different bank and you open those 2 accounts. Again, it's profit and the government money account. That's what I have it called, is like actual government money. And then after you set up all your accounts, and you can set up more accounts if you want, but I have the basic 5. So after that, you determine what are called TAPs, or target allocation percentages. So what this is the idea that money flows into your law firm. It goes into the income account, which is the holding account. And then you have TAPs, these target allocation percentages, that go out in set percentages to the different accounts. So you set up the amount that you're going to get paid as a percentage of the income that comes in to your law firm. So that goes into the owner's pay account. You set up the amount, the percentage that's going to go into taxes. You know, it is 15 or 20%, whatever it is. You have the amount that's going to go into these other things. Then you, and you also have the profit account. So what you do is you take all this money in and then you allocate it according to these percentages. And Michalowicz, I know you can't see this, but Michalowicz has the TAPs in there, the suggested target allocation percentages based on your revenue. So let's look at a fairly normal law firm. 56% of American attorneys are solos, and they make somewhere in the order of $250,000 a year, maybe $300,000 a year, or something like that in revenue. So if it's 0 to 250K per year in revenue, then your TAPs would be like this: profit 5%. So every month, 5% goes into profit. 50% goes into owner pay, because you're pretty much it, right? So 50% goes to you. Tax, 15%. Operating expenses, 30%. When you go up the ladder to 250,000 to 500,000, changes a little bit. So profit would be 10%. Owner's pay would be 35%. That necessarily goes down because you probably have another employee at this point. Taxes would still be 15%, and operating expenses would be 40% because you're spending more money on the employee, you're spending more money in advertising. Once you hit, let's say you hit $1 million. So profit is 10%, owner pay then goes down to 10%. So you're really taking a lot more on the profit side, and I'll get to that, the distribution side. And then tax would be 15. The operating expenses would be 65 because you probably have, at $1 million, you probably have 3 lawyers and a couple staff or something along those lines. So you set all of those up, and then you stick with it. You stick with your TAPs, right? You do not go rob the bank account, do anything like that. You stick to these things. And if you, it's a budget, right? So if you're going over, then you need to figure out how to cut costs. And that's just the way it is. So I know, one of the ways that Lee Rosen, who many of us probably know in here, cut costs was to not have a physical office anymore. I think he estimated that he cut 5% of his total cost, 5 to 7% of his total cost, by not having a physical office. If that sort of thing works for you, then that's what's encouraged by Profit First, right? To cut these kind of costs. So you go through with a fine-tooth comb and you're cutting everything that is unnecessary. I would tell you, don't really cut that much advertising, especially in a situation like this. I think in this kind of situation, we need to expand into the problem, right? We need to expand right now. We just opened another office about 40 miles north of where we are. We're spending more on advertising, but we can do that because I built up about 7.5 to 8 months worth of reserves at this point for paying my people. So you really need to be able to expand into this, but you really do need to cut your costs as much as possible and then allocate it to the things that are truly important. And then he kind of goes on every, on the 10th and 25th, you're really allocating, you're bringing in the money, and then you're allocating it according to your TAPS. Every quarter, you go through and you pay your taxes. If you do it that way, we pay every month, but if you're doing quarterly taxes, you go pay your taxes. You take an allocation or a draw from your profits. So profits, essentially 5% always stays in profit, and then every quarter you're taking 5% out. So you're taking half of the profits out as a distribution to yourself as the owner. You cannot do that. Like, I'm not doing that right now because I'm hoarding cash so we can operate here. But that's kind of how Michalowicz wants you to do it. And then every year you really need to look at your revenues and then reallocate your TAPS and decide how you're going to deal with things prospectively for the next year. I know that sounds complicated, but let me tell you, once you do it for about 3 months, you're going to spend about 15 minutes a month. And then every year when you reallocate things, you'll probably spend 2 to 3 hours. And that is about it. I've loved this system. I think it's super easy to implement. I think it's super easy to do. Once you get to 5 or 10 million in revenue, you may need to change things up a little bit, but that's what, maybe 1% of law firms in America. So for the rest of us, use Profit First.